The Lunaverse by Rainbow Double Dash, Episode 23, Elements of Insanity, Chapter 9 by Emeral Bookwise. Oh, and we're back. Back to Martial Art for User channel. We're home. The effort it expends. Whoso manner was a bustle of activity. Every pony who was any pony had been invited, and even those who had not now pressed against each other in a throng as they lined up behind the velvet ropes, to cast a fleeting glimpse of the cavalcade of nobles, celebrities, and other individuals of wealth and class arrived for the evening's festivities. The crowd reached a fevered pitch as a gaudy carriage that looked more like a portable stage rolled up to the manor. Strumming lights and music filled the air as Sapphire Swords punctuated her arrival by seeking a preview from her upcoming Zigavili Foley's tour. So enraptured was the crowd that scarcely any pony cared or noticed when a more practical carriage bearing the Baron Mounting Max in his state was the next to arrive. Inside the gates, the reception being held in the courtyard was a scene of more tranquil civility. A sound dampening spell on the outer walls kept most of the racket from outside to a minimum. Magically enhanced music from the impromptu concert managed to bleed through regardless. However, causing a few of the stiffier novels to roll their eyes and hurroof at having to share the evening in the presence of a pop-aisle sensation. Black uniformed servants moved seamlessly amongst the various guests, carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres and fine wines to tide those guests over until the doors to the proper manor opened to begin the actual event. It was in all ways exactly what one would expect of a high-class gathering, yet that did little to the mind of one lavender-coated unicorn mare. Twilight Sparkle tugged awkwardly at the straps of her uniform with one hoof, while levitating a tray of wine glasses with her magical aura. Her eyes kept darting about the crowd as she muttered under her breath, "Oh, this was a bad idea. I just know it. I'll be spy for sure. I've actually met some of these ponies before, and—" Clover Charms, wearing an identical uniform and balancing a tray of excited cheeses on her back, put a reassuring hope on her compatriot's shoulder. "Just chill out, Tibbs. No pony's going to recognize you." "But over there, by those rose bushes, that's Zenith!" "Zenith? Zenith?" God, I love Fallout Equestria. I'm sure she's still holding a grudge from when I split punch all over her new dress at her birthday, back when we were both 7. This is what you get for messing with a dignitary for Zebrica. I never even wanted to go in the first place, but Mother insisted that she and Count Apex have always been best friends growing up. They were always so certain the two of us would hit it off just as well. Yes, and I'm sure if you wanted to guess, the two of you could have had an epic confrontation. Clover rolled her eyes briefly before continuing. Full of even more punch stains and maybe even a little vein pulling. You're not a guest, Joe. You're just one of the hired help. Struggling to keep her voice in check, Twilight rasped a reply. Easy for you to say. Nobody even cares who you are. Only too late did she realize the unintended insult and add, Wait, no, I didn't mean it like that, Lucky. I know, and none taken. Now shut up and smile. No, nothing like that. You look like a deranged madman. Just keep it relaxed and smooth, and for the moon's sake, girl, believe. Better? Yes, but... Shh! No buts, just listen. I'm sure you think that you remember every pony from that old party. But telling me this, who served the cake? That's easy. It was a stallion in one of those poofy white chef's hats. I think they call it Choc Blancs. Funny story, they were originally invented for... I don't mean what he was learning. I mean what do you look like. Clover scarcely waited for her friend's expression to become vacant and puzzled. See? You can't remember. No pony ever remembers the hired help. We're all just singularity faces and entertained with no mass. So as long as you do your job, no pony will ever give you so much as a second glance. Are you sure? Girl! If you want to break our cover, I think there's some roll about it. Almost as if on cue, trumpets blared, followed by an orchestral score. Wide-eyed, Clover mouthed awkwardly, uncertain what to do, before fireworks drew all eyes to the sky above the manor. A team of 12 ponies flew formation overhead, not on the ordinary feather wings of a Pegasus, but a glittering, multi-hued butterfly-like wings. The dusted flyers streaked tails of glittering dust as they danced and twirled about each other, all in perfect timing to the elegant musical accompaniment. As the performance reached crescendo, they all spiraled straight down together, before breaking off into a beautiful starburst formation in front of the manor's doors. Then the team landed, 6 ponies to either side, their gentle wing beats sending glittering dust swirling lightly about the carpeted trail as the doors to the manor opened, revealing a host of the evening as he sauntered out with poised dignity. There would be no mistaking this pony for any mere guess, as Poussin wore an iridescent and long feathery dress with a matching or elaborate headpiece. Specifically designed weaves, meshed and interwoven with the own Pegasus wings, caused the gown's train to ripple and pulsate as he flexed, finally reaching the end of the grand dais that was effectively the manor's front porch. Viceroy spread her wings wide, and with them her entire ensemble bloomed and fanned out, giving her an appearance reminiscent of a peacock. Poussin then began making her well-rehearsed welcoming address. At the other end of the courtyard, though, the Viceroy's words were not held the intent of a certain mare. "Well," Clover said. Twilight shrugged. "I guess she does know how to make an entrance, so it seemed a bit overly showy to me." "Not Viceroy, what's her name? I was talking about the ponies with those feather things. I've never seen anything like it except in fairy tale books as a kid. What kind of ponies are those, anyway?" "All that. It's just an advanced conjuration that reads from Gossamer and Dew. They aren't fairies, just normal ponies." She paused briefly to rub her chin in contemplation. "Still, it's pretty rare to find a unicorn with the talent to cast it. Plus, the spell is rather difficult for even a trained unicorn to cast more than once every few days. Oh, and it only lasts 3 days, too. Altogether, Poussin's probably had to pay a lot of money to bring in enough experts to cast it 12 times in such order." "Right. It's a spell. Does that mean you can cast it too?"
"Well, yes, actually. My talent is magic, after all."
Though I'm mentioning that, Twilight couldn't help but reflectively glance back at her disguised cutie mark. Again, she found her mind dwelling on her continued inability to discern the nature of the spell Lemonhearts had used to create the effect. Such musings were quickly distracted, though. "It's settled!"
"What's settled?"
"They're going to cast that spell on me. Well, once or so an elements of harmony thing is over and all it is. I've always wondered what it would be like to fly for myself. Did I ever tell you my mother was a Pegasus? At least that's what I was always told in Seville. Grover, they must say, it's a damn good thing you can't fly the coop like that foul mother of yours." Twilight sighed, though she was unsure if that was a remainder of her compatriot's less than desirable upbringing, or just a forced pun that pained her more. Despite the officiality of the party moving from the outdoor courtyard and into the main ballroom inside, one might be hard-pressed to tell much difference. The same stuffy novels still largely went about the same stuffy conversations. Servants still moved about unnoticed, while attending to the casual disinterest of the guests. They would discard empty glasses and spent napkins. There were, however, now 3 buffet tables, each proudly displaying a banner identifying the farm that it was running, and identifying what piece they finished at a racing competition in Trondheim. Lucy Screw's violet eyes were barely more than pinpricks, though as she nervously glanced around the crowd. She visited from one hoof to the other. In some ways the crowd was a mixed blessing, since it was easy to maintain anonymity among such a throng, but compared to the courtyard, the ballroom was barely more densely packed, leading to an additional claustrophobic tension. Still, it also gave her an excuse to huddle all the more closely alongside her date, though actually thinking about that fact caused her to blush. Lucy spared a silent glance at Silver Star, only for her heart to skip a beat as she was yet again no less shocked than the first time to see how elegantly he cleaned up. Now, he bore a bow tie and over a dapper collar, with matching cuffed breast pib and a sash around his midsection. His mane and tail both had been smoothed and glossed. Her heart sank, though, as she noticed him avert his own gaze from hers, unaware that the former sheriff was merely just as fearful of being caught gawking at the mayor's own loose-fitting and semi-sheer single-shouldered silver dress. The volume of the crowd diminished, or perhaps merely overwhelmed, as a small orchestra began to play a waltz. The crowd shifted as guests cleared space for couples as they took to the dance floor. So a small corner of her mind hijacked Lucy's mouth before the rest of her could stop it as she asked,
Shall we?
Silver Star's gaze narrowed sternly. "Well, Lucy, you know that ain't exactly what we're here for." The mayor was crestfallen and dropped her gaze to the floor. Of course she knew that. She should have known better than even ask in the first place. Yet for that one momentary instant she had foolishly allowed herself to get swept away, to wish if only briefly that she could pretend the two of them could be. A hoof gently lifted her head, as a second wiped a stray bit of hair back into the decorative bun her mane had been styled into. Their amazed gaze met, and as Lucy lost herself in the ocean of the stallion's deep blue eyes, she didn't notice Halsey paused and gulped audibly before speaking. But, well, I reckon we can make time for just one. The next few minutes lasted both an eternity and yet were all too fleeting. As the 2 ponies left the world and all its troubles behind, it was indulgent and unbeknownst to each other. Each silently cursed their weakness, or they feared they might do so later. For now, though, in this brief moment of time, all they were was happy. From across the room, Lemon Hearts watched the happy couple lose themselves in the moment. Young love was such a sweet thing, and for her purposes most useful as well. Silver Star had proved to be just a little more canny than she was comfortable with. The former sheriff seemed to have an innate affinity for rooting out deceptions. Perhaps he was just so determined to wallow in his own misery that he was purely incapable of believing in the kind benefits she pretended to offer. By the beloved, however, it was easy enough for Lemon Hearts to hide behind the gratitude he owed her for reuniting them. His woeful lack of self-esteem certainly helped as well. The poor fellow was so convinced he was unworthy of Lucy's love that he failed to understand just how much the mare pined for him. Now that Lucy was much better, it was almost adorable at how utterly perfect for each other the 2 ponies were, and their utterly pathetic inability to admit their own feelings. Putting the would-be lovebirds out of her mind, Lemonheart turned her attention to the more immediate concerns of what to do about the stodgy marquise that was her date for the evening. So far she had been playing demure hanger-on, while the stallion engaged other guests in the typically dull conversations that only the petty-minded nobility found interesting. Still, now that she was in the front door, she had no more use for him, and was looking for a convenient opportunity to sneak off into the crowd. But are orphans really that much of a problem in the wider Equestria? She had only been paying scant attention to the conversation. Up to this point, she only needed to occasionally nod or make some other vocal affirmation to provide an illusion of interest. Practiced as she was, though, at social manipulations, Lemon Hearts knew to listen for key words that required more attention, and apparently at some point her date must have moved the subject onto her own profession. The noble who asked the question, a Baron Monty Mass, as he recalled having been introduced to her, proceeded without waiting further reply. Well, sure enough, even back home in Nepal, unfortunate accidents do happen. When such things do happen, though, there's almost always a close family member or friend that can take such falls in. Lemon Hearts had praised the Baron, as he decided how to, or even to, respond. She'd never heard of the province of Nepal before, but then again, she never had much interest in politics beyond what she needed to know to manipulate the local authorities. Perhaps it was new. Certainly, inflection in the Baron's use of the word suggested he wasn't used to calling it such. What providence was it, though? Then again, judging by this Max, he seemed to be a pony ill at ease with formality, preferring a cruder vernacular. He was also rather rugged in build, not like the farmer, though. But perhaps a mountaineer. Yes, that would fit with his accent, though it sounded distinctly northern, somewhere most likely near the borders to the Griffin Kingdoms. None of these, however, were thoughts Lemon Hearts actually dwelt on. She honed such observational skills over decades of practice, and so they all came of a matter instinct to her. Thus, only a second or two passed before she finally spoke.
Were it only in simple necessities, Mr. Monty?
Most nobles would take offense at an address that failed to acknowledge their status. However, Lemon Hearts soon saw by the Baron's expression she had judged correctly, and that the Lester tile, appended to the first part of his name no less, would put the Max at ease. Seizing the moment, she continued,
In your own home province, where isolated villages of only a few hundred ponies, plus the odd goat or hippogriff are the norm, it's rather a simple matter for everyone to know everyone else. In the cities where we are constantly surrounded by thousands or more, however, there just isn't enough time in the day to meet them all. As such, it is exceedingly difficult to know whom we can be trusted, and so far, too many ponies respond by simply trusting no pony at all.
Her words had clearly struck a nerve, and the obvious disappointment on Max's face was plain to see. Yes, this was clearly a noble, still new to the shadowy games of the night court, an easy mark for both his peers and for herself.
Of course, that's not to say we don't all still have our associates, but the kind of community bond strong enough to take in a stranger's child. Not so much. Even when it's such the case, there is always still the matter of trust. Sad it is to say that there will always those who take in abandoned children, not out of genuine love, but for rather any number of potential ulterior motives. Even though her outward mask of weary resignation, Lemon Hearts might be inclined to chuckle to herself at the irony. That is, of course, if such concerns had ever even bothered her in the first place. That, Mr. Monty, is why organizations with established reputations like my own are so vital.
Yeah, I suppose I see the point in that, but...
The Baron's words trailed off, as he seemed to grapple with the new and unfamiliar concepts assailing him. Good! Clement Hart sighed as he smiled, both as an outward sign of emotional reassurance, while also inwardly over just how easy it was to manipulate him. She allowed a tear to well up in the corner of his eye to add weight to her next words. Why, just the other day I met a grown mare who slid through the cracks. Spent her whole youth growing up shuffled between foster families that never really wanted her in the first place. This is, of course, entirely true. Even the circumstances she met Clover Charms had nothing to do with her orphanage. This as well, too, as the unfortunate mare possessed nothing of any use or interest to Lemon Hearts outside of her role in Miss Sparkle's plan. That's no way for any foal to grow up, wouldn't you agree?
No, of course not.
See, Max, sighed the green mare accompanying the Baron, presumably his own date. Madame Hearts here is such a wonderful bunny. Lemon Hearts hardly paid the young man any mind until now, who had been entirely unassuming, almost shy. Having finally spoken up, though, then quickly changed. I'm sorry. I mean, that is, it's just that I've been something of a fan of your work for some time now. It's both an honor and privilege to finally meet you in person. You've done such a wonderful job for so many foes. I am actually the Patreon for a charity helping to serve an orphanage similar to yours in Ontario, and I was just wondering, that is, if it wouldn't be too much of an inconvenience, if I could pick your brains for a moment.
Sighing angrily, Lemon Hearts cursed the complication. It wasn't the first time she had been approached in such a matter, but surrounded by such an ostentatious crowd as tonight's jubilation, she had not expected to be singled out by any pony actually familiar with her work.
Of course, dear. Although now may not be the time for a detailed discussion. Maybe we can arrange a more formal meeting somewhere? Oh, I would like that, but can I ask a few questions?
The mare was persistent. Lemon Hearts had to give her credit for that. She didn't have time to placate such trivialities. Her own observations of the crowd's movements this evening. Her best opportunity to intercept her intended target would be coming up shortly. She had to find a way to extricate herself from this discussion without further delay.
It is such a wonderful thing to see such enthusiasm in young and coming dilettantes. You remind me so much of myself at your age.
Actually, the young noble hadn't even have a clue the things Lemon Hearts had actually done at that age. She ran like screaming in terror.
With that would be only more ponies like us, Equestria would be a better place. Of course, I would be glad to lend whatever personal assistance I can to help your own endeavors succeed. I find myself becoming a bit parched, though. Would anybody like a drink?
I think I could stand another mead.
I would like wine myself. All too easy. Good, I just...
No need, interjected her own so-called date. That is what the servers are here for, after all.
There's no need to bother, I can... Infuriatingly enough, the stallion had already caught his front hose together, summoning a black-clad servant to take their order.
Chocolate for milk for you, wasn't it?
Lucy's thoughts lingered on the dance she shared with Silver Star. And now, woefully short it had been. Darren wasn't here for such things, of course, though, so she had to excuse herself to attend to a mission. Now she was all alone in the crowd. She felt utterly lost as she once again found herself questioning if she really had anything meaningful to contribute to the group's task. Well, hello there, Miss Screws. Turning at the address, Lucy found herself face to face with none other than Vice-Ring Prussant. It's quite the unexpected surprise to see you here. I do not believe we've ever met before. After my staff informed me that the widow of one of my former and most influential financial advisors was in attendance. However, it would have been remiss for me not to take the opportunity to see you personally. Your late husband will always spoke well of you. His passing was truly a tragic loss that lessens all of us. Being face to face with the Viceroy was undecidedly nerve-wracking. Lemon Hearts, however, had predicted this possibility and even given Lucy very specific instructions. Taking a deep breath to steel herself, Lucy did her best to casually brush a hoof across the silver clasp Miss Sparkle had given her. Thank you, Viceroy. I do appreciate the condolences. Now that the signal sent over the enchanted communication device, all she had to do was keep the Viceroy talking until Lemon Hearts could make her own way over. But, well, actually, I was one of the lead carpenters who helped innovate the system a few years back, so we've met before, if only briefly, while you're overseeing construction of the Southeast Gallery. There was almost an instant change in the Viceroy's tone and posture. She was no less an opposing figure, but suddenly she seemed somehow eager. There then, I suppose I owe you a personal measure of thanks, as well for the excellent craftsmanship. The furnishings on that wing are so intricately massed that it's difficult to tell where the old ends and the new begins. Tell me, then, are you doing well for yourself after your husband's untimely passing? I would certainly find some useful amount of your talents in my employ. Thank you for the offer, Viceroy, but my husband left behind substantial savings as well as several lucrative investment contracts and, she paused before finishing, and a sizable life insurance policy as well. My son and I would be more than secure for the next few years, and well, I'm only just now assessing to the loss anyway. I don't think I'm all that ready to go back to work just yet. It was subtle, but Poussin's demeanor immediately fell back into the more neutral stance he started from. Well, I suppose, at least, you seem to be bouncing back now. My servants informed me that you brought a knight. Where is he, pray tell? Silver. Well, I think he said he needed to use the little costume, and well, I wouldn't really call him my date. Just an old friend doing his best to look out for me. Please, there's no need to wear a mask of such propriety with me. It was difficult to tell if the Viceroy actually cared or was just becoming bored. I've had no shortage of paramours in my day. Why, I even married two of them. When each of my husbands passed in turn, I made sure to erect proper monuments to them in the gardens, as well as making sizable donations to the foundations that now bear their names as to ensure their legacy lives on. I never, however, even once wasted a second on mourning. Poussin's expressions remained stern, yet there was something unmistakably sad in her next words. I'm too old now to have much use for a third husband, but you are still young enough. Keep that in mind, lest you find yourself regretting missed opportunities later. It's not mourning, though. I mean, that is... Lucy stammered. How could she admit the real truth of the matter, and her shameful guilt, that she had first fallen in love with Silver Star while her husband had been alive? Worse still, the sheriff hadn't been the first stallion to be flirtatious advances towards during her marriage. Maybe she never actually had the nerve to go through with a full affair, but that hardly alleviated the burdens of sinful desires. Like so many things in her life, she only married her husband for fear of the alternative, being alone and having to fend for herself. Still, had been a good stallion, always approved of her and even gifted her a son. Yet he had also been much older than her, as well as emotionally distant. She had certainly needed him, but never felt like he had needed her. Or at least, that was the excuse she had always held on to as he secretly flirted with other stallions. Despite it all, though, things changed forever on that fateful day in Appaloosa. The tyrant's midnight sun had been taken by the native buffalo as an omen that their ancestral spirits were angry, and so the already tense relationships between them and the settler ponies broke down completely. Silver Star had organized every able-bodied pony into a militia. She tried to be brave for him, but like she always had, she ran away while the others stood her ground. She hid in the first building she could find, and that had nearly been the death of her. One of the rampaging natives ended up charging through the walls and knocked out the main support column. As the building collapsed around her, she stood petrified. A weight had crashed down around her, and then everything went dark. She wasn't dead, though, and some pony else was in the darkness with her, yet it had used his own body to shield hers. She called out Silver Star's name, thinking only the sheriff could be so brave. But quickly discovered instead it was her husband. The secrets of her traitorous heart revealed, fearing no pony would ever find her beneath the rubble. She finally confessed all her sins. She didn't know the response she expected: anger,
sadness, but not that question. Did they make you happy? Her husband then made his own confession that he already knew about her flirtatious affairs, and that he had known the very first. His words were heavy with right breaths, but not a hint of condemnation, and somehow that made it all the worse. I'm sorry, he had wheezed out in barely more restrained whisper. It was my fault. If only I could have been what you needed me to be, then it wouldn't have been so hard for you. All I ever wanted was for you to be happy. But now you'll be free. Just know that I will always love. Was you sure how much time passed in that silent darkness? Such concepts had lost all meaning. She wasn't sure when the light returned. Somewhere a mare was pulled from the rubble, as well as the body of what had once been an elderly stallion. Lucy, however, was far away where she didn't have to see his rude wings, or splintered boards that pierced his... No, she was far away and all alone. A young colt came to comfort the mare, but she didn't move. At some point the mare was taken away from that awful place, but the pain never went away. Even when she was eventually brought back to her home in Baltimore, it never subsided. How could it, when everything in the state that had been her husband's was a reminder of? Fortunately, Lucy was still far away, where such pain couldn't exist. The colt was also at the house. The son tended to his mother's every need with ceaseless dedication. Yet she lacked the strength of will to even for so much to acknowledge his affections. So it continued. For how long she couldn't tell. Days, nights, all blurred together. Once he even imagined Silverstar to come see her. But no. Why would he? Why would anyone? Eventually, though, some pony did. Miss Cruz. Lucy blinked and looked up, and there they were again. Those same rosy eyes that greeted her from the long waking slumber. Believing she considered she ever awoken in the first place. But this time she knew the name that belonged to those eyes. Lemon hearts. The eyes narrowed, and for the briefest moment, Lucy thought she saw something behind them. Something that frightened her. The Fighting, where is he? Lucy looked from side to side, quick to remember where she was, and what she was supposed to be doing. I think she left. Lemon Hearts frowned as her gaze intensified, becoming like a blade that pierced Lucy's very soul. She wanted to apologize, to beg for forgiveness. But under that icy glare, she could hardly even breathe. It's okay, dearie. And just like that, it was over. Lucy blinked, and only the matronly unicorn was again the same gently nurturing pony she had always been. Had it only been Lucy's own guilt that made it ever different? Before Lucy could find the strength to speak again, though, Lemon Heart had already turned it away. A hoof held to her own earpiece. Miss Charms, I think I'm going to need your help with Plan B. Snowflake stood at his post, guarding the stairs. He wore some kind of black service uniform instead of armor, but that did nothing to diminish his excitement. So far, agreeing to help that purple unicorn lady had been the best choice he had ever made. It was a good thing since that other nice unicorn had come along to tell him it had nothing to do at all with an elephant orchestra, because now he was here guarding the employee of actual nobility. The brown stallion, Silverstar, had walked up to him. The pony must have been really used to wearing his hat, because he reached up a hoof to tip it in greeting, before realizing his head was bare. Snowflake suppressed a laugh. Guards had to be emotionless all the time, but the sight was so silly that a mild snort still escaped his nostrils. That was okay, though, as Snowflake kept a stern expression so hopefully it was just sound intimidating. The guards were supposed to be intimidating. Apparently, though, it wasn't intimidating enough, as the pony proceeded to try and walk past them. Snowflake fervently sprung into action, using one hoof to gently, but fervently push the pony back as he sidestepped to interpose himself in front of the stairs. Silverstar narrowed his eyes, before muttering something incomprehensible under his breath. Snowflake knew his job, though. No pony except his staff or the fight stream was allowed past the stairs. A moment later, the other stallion muttered again, a bit louder, but Snowflake couldn't quite make it out. This is why he hated trying to talk to ponies with mustaches. Their daughter things just muffled the typical mumblings of most ponies even more.
Finally, the other pony reached the hoof out, and brushing aside a bit of mane, tapped the silver air clasp hidden beneath.
I'm sorry, Snowflake, it's me. Doesn't remember?
For a moment, Snowflake was confused. How the words seemed to come from directly inside his own ear, instead of the other stallion's mouth. But then he remembered the silver clasp he'd been given. He couldn't quite figure out why the other stallion would be using the communication device when they were standing right next to each other, especially to ask such a silly question.
Yeah! Good. If it does care, let's step aside.
The pony then pushed a hoof into him. A Snowflake stood his ground. Is there some kind of purple problem? That was the voice of the purple unicorn lady. Tambourine? Or was it Skylight? Or maybe Sparkle? Clover called her a number 10 for some reason, but that only made less sense as their team only had 6 ponies in it. So seriously, the purple unicorn lady had so many different names it was hard to keep track. Still, it didn't mind all that much. All those quirks even made her cuter.
It's Snowflake, Try. He's being trouble as a mule.
Hey! In Ron Culler's voice, my great also was a mule.
Sorry, don't mean any offense by it.
Oh, don't be sorry. She was a real ass. Snowflake snickered at the pun. Except, wait, if her aunt was a mule, would that only make her part ass? Then it dawned to him. That joke was intentionally half-assed! Brilliant!
Right.
Drawled the other stallion, who had clearly no appreciation for good comedy.
Well, either way, he's being dense as a rock and ain't buzzing an inch. I think maybe he got himself confused about which job he's supposed to be doing.
The compliment about his impressive physique helped Snowflake gain some composure. Silver Star was clearly the one who didn't understand. There was no job more important than being a guard for a vice queen. Well, unless it was being a guard for the princess herself. You just need to ask him the right way, said Clover. Snowflake, hon, you remember that me and Trips were both working here on Recon, right? And that's how I helped you get the job.
Yeah!
Snowflake shouted in reply. Then, remembering that he was actually speaking to him from far away, put a hoof up to his own ear closet and repeated,
Yeah!
He had almost forgotten, but the other stallion really working here? That stallion didn't seem to be wearing any kind of uniform. Was that nickname Clover got him? Maybe he got fired for calling him Clumsy or something. You know, you don't have to shout, said the purple unicorn lady. The enchantment on the class can pick up even the faintest whisper.
Ah, Tim's. Don't be so hard on the dog. I think it's cute.
Snowflake beamed with pride at the mayor's compliment. She was pretty cute herself, but the purple unicorn lady was cuter still. Of course, the stallion is eligible himself. It did pay to keep his options open. And then again, both bears seemed friendly enough with each other, too. Maybe they wouldn't mind sharing him. Or maybe they could even make it a threesome. Anyway, if you could be a dear and let trips go on by that great favor. Remember, we all got to the bottom missing here with the fate of all the crosses are writing on it. That was right. Snowflake was still a little sketchy on the details. But he remembered the purple unicorn lady saying something about needing to find an artifact to stop some flaming Trent. Or was it the Trent's son that was on fire? The second one probably made more sense, because the lemon unicorn took a lot of her own children. Even though the child of a Trent wouldn't still be a Trent, too, so it probably wouldn't make much of a difference. Still, he wasn't so sure how a great, dangerous burning tree spirit really was. Wouldn't it just burn away to ashes before he could hurt anybody? Or was it just the fire that was trying to put out before the poor thing died? But it was already on fire. Did he really have time to save it? Either way, he guessed maybe it was just some weird magic thing. Of course, now that he's not to think of it, how could one Trent be so important? Then again, there had been mentioned some kind of queen. It was the queen of the Trents that needed help saving her son. Then maybe some kind of diplomatic treaty was at stake. Briefly, Snowflake fantasized himself in the full armor of Royal Guard, leading the charge against the enemy of walking trees. Then shook his head. If the Trent Queen was asking for their help, then surely they must be a peaceful race, and such a good pony like himself would do everything he could to help. Probably even get a hero's medal. And so handsome as he was now, he get even more feelings once he was a famous hero. His music was interrupted by a vibration he felt coming through the front floor. Glancing up, he saw Silver Star tapping a hoof impatiently. He'll sell then.
Yeah!
He said as he stepped aside, and unhooked the velvet roof that cordoned off the staircase. Carrot Top didn't really own any formal clothes suitable for an event like this. She briefly considered commissioning something for Carousel Boutique, but
Not only would that cut into her profits, but that would also mean submitting herself to the scrutiny of the shop's owner. Rarity wasn't a bad pony, but she could be a bit overbearing, especially when she got inspired. It had been hectic enough that one time Carrot Top found herself owing the fashionista a favor and agreed to model for her, so it was less enthusiastic to risk a free performance if she didn't have to. Fortunately, while digging through one of her grandmother's old trunks, Carrot Top had managed to find something to wear. The pale mulberry garden dress was a little large on her, trimmed in more laces he really cared for, and overall was noticeably dated, but still functional enough. Carrot Top still felt a little silly wearing the matchmaking wide-brimmed sun hat indoors, but she decided the dress looked sillier without it. Of course, what made her feel the silliest of all was how much better dressed Applejack was. Her fellow farmer had discarded her usual Stetson, and now was instead garbed in a wide-collared, light-brown blouse that led to a double-scalated skirt. Round on top with red underneath, it trimmed in a sandy, almost but not quite gold embroidery. Her tail had been tucked into a tight bun and hidden beneath the skirts, while her mane had been rigorously combed and conditioned, leaving it smooth and wavy with just the slightest curl at the tips. The whole outfit was topped by a beaded green necklace and an apple-shaped pendant. Even though she knew better, Carrot Top couldn't help but feel some of her old jealousy towards Applejack return. While her own Carrot Farm was a far cry from the most successful in Ponyville, one of the things Carrot Top did like to pride herself on was being one of, if not the best-looking farmers, especially her mane. Unfortunately, now Applejack was proving to have perhaps always been a foolish pride. No doubt, Carrot Top had put more effort into personal grooming on a daily basis, but now it was all too apparent that Applejack was more than capable of cleaning up when the occasion suited. Not only that, but above beyond, the dress was both more stylish and functional than her own frumpy and salto. Carrot Top also found herself overshadowed by even more undeniable fact. Applejack was just better talking to other ponies. Now, Carrot Top held no illusions in regard to her own social skills. She was by no means, however bluntly speaking, was a doormat, and she knew it. Furthermore, she knew full well that one of Ponyville's community leaders, Applejack was no stranger to public speaking, and even more so an expert on self-publicizing salesmare. Still, Carrot Top had perhaps hoped that the apple farmer's rustic company vernacular would leave her distinctly out of place among so many nobles. No such luck, however, as Applejack had perfectly affected an astonishingly accurate upper-class Manhattan accent that even put a posh socialite like Rarity to shame. Carrot Top supposed she wouldn't really have been so shocked, though. During their train trip to Ponyville, Applejack told her a story of how, as a young filly, before earning her cutie mark, she had briefly aspired to be an executive in the Apple Trust, during which time she lived with her aunt and uncle in Manhattan. Even if Applejack eventually left the big city behind to return to a life of working the land with her own forehoofs, in doing so discover her true passion, it was clear she never forgotten the lessons she learned how to hobnob with the snobs. Still, for all the minor resentments she was struggling to suppress, Carrot Top couldn't argue with the results. Applejack had brought with her all the same enthusiasm that made her market stand the best in town. And so, the shared buffet table was easily as busy as the other catering teams combined. Not much that made all the difference. Carrot Top had already been paid in full by the Fight Stream for her services, so it didn't matter how many guests chose her for food over the other options. At least not directly. The greater feminine was an exposure. More than a few guests had asked about ordering produce shipments. True to her word, though, Applejack didn't steal the opportunity to promote Sweet Apple Acres, never even mentioning it once. Unfortunately, Applejack didn't do anything to help promote Carrot Top's own Golden Harvest as much either, instead speaking mostly in broad terms of the entire Ponyville farming community. Still, with the recent formation of the Union, that might as well have been well. This introspection was spoken when Carrot Top felt the gentle nuts. "Look sharp, girl. Fast train's killing this way," whispered Applejack, briefly slipping back into her casual drawl for those private words. As Fast Train Poussons offered the buffet table, Carrot Top put on her best smile, though she wasn't sure what to expect from this encounter. Then a different pan crossed her mind. "Wait! Am I supposed to bow?" Poussons was royalty, second only to Princess Luna herself. She tried to bow while still behind the carrying table, though, so you'd almost be completely hidden from view.
Maybe she needed to rustle quickly around to properly greet the Vice Reed. Oh, why didn't I mess up on my etiquette during the trip over? An awkward silence hung in the air as Kirita stood paralyzed with indecision. Shortly, though, she realized that Applejack wasn't going to cover for her on this one. Probably out of respect, and not wanting to upstage Carrot Top in front of the noble that invited her. Unless just maybe this had been Applejack's plan all along, to leave Carrot Top high and dry when good impressions mattered most. No! She mentally slapped herself. Applejack and I aren't rivals anymore. We're friends, aren't we? All the while, the awkward silence only stretched out even more awkwardly, as he became increasingly aware that all eyes were on her. No, never. Or nothing. Good evening, Your Grace. The moment she spoke, however, Carrot Top wondered if that was the right term of address or not.
Either way, it's too late now.
This is quite the gathering you have here. I'm actually a little overwhelmed by it all. She forced out a brief chuckle from the grin that was starting to feel painfully plastered to her face. But it's an honor to be part of it. There was again a pause that seemed to stretch out for an eternity, as the Vice Reed seemed to appraise the former farmer. Please, the honor is all mine. It is only more so a privilege to have a national hero such as yourself here with us, not? Kirtar's dread at embarrassing herself was now quickly overwhelmed by an even deeper concern. Forgive me, Vice-Reed, but I was under the impression that I had been invited here tonight for my placement in the Constitution at Trottingham, not because of my element of harmony. Quite right you are. It would, however, be equally remiss of me to not at least acknowledge the greatest service you performed for this whole nation, and at no small risk to your own personal safety. Every pony in Equestria owes you a debt of gratitude, be they commoner or noble alike. Oh, well, in that case, I thank you, I guess. Now, thank you. Tell me, though, have you enjoyed your visit to Palermo? We have a rich cultural history here. Actually, I've been so busy with all the catering preparations, I don't really have a chance to see anything but the kitchens. As an afterthought, Carrot Top added, although I suppose I did end up taking a brief trip down to the markets for some extra supplies. I guess that was nice. Actually, it had been more than just nice. It had been nearly perfect. Now she thought about it more, maybe a little too perfect. It had almost been like some kind of scripted performance. On further consideration, she only needed to go to the markets at all because of a last-minute change in the menu request. She stared at Poussins, wondering if the Vice-Reed was really devious enough to pay off that many ponies, just to ensure Carrot Top would be impressed. No, that kind of conspiracy would have to be insane even by Trixie standards. Hey! Wouldn't it? So solemn. Perhaps I could arrange a tour for you and the other caterers, of course. Not just in the city, but the surrounding countryside as well. Tell me, were you aware of Palermo recently instituted a land grant program to encourage agricultural development? Has Lacey been aware of that fact? Well, only just recently, as of this morning to be precise, during an impromptu check out to the markets. Again, not so much as to why so many ponies would be discussing the same thing before, but now? Wait, are you trying to bribe me into moving here? There was a slight gasp for several ponies in the entourage of sycophants that seemed to hang on the Vice-Reed's every word, but Poussins herself was unfazed. But of course not. It is nothing more than professing a courtesy. A fine upstanding farmer such as yourself should always be aware of the options available to her by which she can advance her heart. Can't you agree? If Poussins actually meant that as a fellow question, Carrot Top would never know, because the Vice-Reed proceeded without any kind of reply. Were it my intent to bribe you, it would hardly be in my own interest to do so in such a public renewal as this. This is merely a question I would have asked any other farmer, and indeed I intend to ask the other caterers as well. Poussins' gaze shifted to the side before she continued. And to that end, what of your associate here? I am to understand correctly, she too is the proprietor of her own farm, and if I'm not mistaken, the fifth place finalist for Trottingham as well. Well, yeah, Fosterin, and I do very much appreciate your most gracious invitation. I must regretfully decline, however. You see, the Smith branch of the Apple Trust has lived above over generations. We even helped found the town. I'm quite certain that pony of your eminence can understand the responsibility that entails. Yeah, Carrot Top added. I got friends in Ponyfield too, and I could never leave them behind. Trying once again to face Carrot Top, the Vice Green pressed. Well, if that's your concern, I assure you that Palermo has an ample employment opportunities for teachers, weather ponies, and postal workers as well. We also have a fine appreciation for the arts in all their forms, including music.
Wait, you forgot one!
Given just how keenly aware the Vice Green seemed to be in regard to the professions of all her friends,
Carrot Top was more sure than ever this was little more than a fatally failed ruse to recruit the heroes who bore the elements of harmony,
especially since there was no similar attempt had been made to further persuade Applejack. Though Carrot Top couldn't help but notice that the Vice Green hadn't offered to advance Trixie's political career. Then again, it was hardly a secret that Trixie had never been popular amongst the nobles, so it probably made sense for Puissance to perhaps be more reluctant in that regard. Oh, but listen to me, Platinum, Puissance continued. Such offers must sound terribly presumptuous of me. Please forgive an old American's insensibilities. Still, it can hardly be denied that ponies of such vaunted importance as you and your friends deserve the very best equestrian you can offer, without the need to worry about misguided fools who would only attempt to exploit you for your own petty gain. And well, I like to think that Palermo is the place that could be there for you, if you let it. Carrot Top was silent, unsure how to even respond. Has he misjudged Puissance? Even if the noble had been trying to convince Carrot Top to move here, and bring all her friends with her, was it possible that Vice Green really only wanted to do so to generally protect them from harm? Having a powerful political ally would certainly keep them from any more Greengrass's machinations. The Duke had already tried to coerce Lyra through her old mentor, and those Flimflam brothers to scam Carrot Top herself, and then there was that sleazy stallion who nearly bewitched Cheerilee. The thought of that last one truly made her suffer. Who could say which one of them he would go after next, or how? Anyway, if you'll excuse me, I have other guests to attend. Without any warning, the Vice Green suddenly found herself overcovered in fondue. Gas shots echoed through the entire crowd as all eyes turned to the guilty party. The Grey Coy and mossy made Earth Pony servant smiled broadly. Oops! But I guess now tonight's dinner really is all on the Vice Green. Any attempt, however, by the mare to worm her way out of trouble with such a poorly conceived joke was only met with a scornful silence. See, a tough crowd. Aye, whatever further excuse you might have died as the mare locked eyes with Puissance, whose own eyes held only a controlled fury. It wasn't restrained fury, as much as it was the promise of the inevitably dire retribution. I'll just be going, that is. And with that, the mare ran off into the crowd. Puissance ruffled her wings with agitation, which, due to the reeking on her peacock gown, splattered bits of fondue on the guests unlucky enough to still be standing in close proximity to her. She meant to give out immediate pursuit to the clumsy servant, though. As the yellow-coated, the blue-made unicorn mare stepped forward from amongst the other sycophants. Vice Green, if you please. I work with many children, and I so know a variety of spells for cleaning out stains. Silver Star looked at the door in front of him. It was certainly ornate enough and fancy enough, but so were most of the doors in the mare. He made this trip once before, while he and Clover had been doing their initial recon surveillance. But he still double-checked the notes Lucy had given him, made sure he'd taken all the correct turns, and counted the proper number of doors and intersections. Finally confident, he took one glance down at the other end of the hall, before bringing a hoof to his ear.
Alright, Try, I'm here, and the coastal's clear, so
Pop!
come right on up.
Superstar trailed up as the unicorn teleported directly in front of him.
I thought you said you all still need a mare to trace the class before you did like it.
Twilight grinned sheepishly. I was sort of already tracking you most of the way. Shrugging, the stallion turned to the door.
Lucy says I ain't security that be normally on this room. Ain't supposed to be working tonight, so getting hit shouldn't be too hard.
Twilight blinked as her eyes closed with a faint light of a detection spell to confirm the lack of lingering enchantments. She's right. Just like everywhere else inside the manor, I can see a pretty advanced warding charm, but they're all connected to a single spell matrix. No way to turn one off without turning them all off. Normally, that's probably a good thing, as it means any attempt to bypass one ward would risk setting all the others off. With so many guests here tonight, though, the alarms would probably go haywire trying to keep track of every pony. Maybe it really was the serendipitous that we changed the plan to break tonight. I could probably work out a care spell for these wards, but it would have taken weeks of research.
Don't reckon I understand half the things you just said there, but maybe we should get on with it before one of the guard patrol sweeps the area.
Oh, right. I'll start scrying the other side to get an accurate teleportation vector. Should take 2 or 3 minutes. There was a sudden soft crack as Silver Star finally leaned his weight against the door. About 5 seconds later, it was followed by a snap. The lock gave way. As the door swung open, Silver Star stepped aside.
Ladies first.
Not very subtle.
Ain't nothing much likely to be subtle about any of this before we go through here tonight. Best way to cover our tracks is to be as quick as possible. Long gone, for any point figures out we're even here.
The two ponies then stepped through the door into Poisson's private study. The room was ornately decorated. Every corner and piece of furniture featured intricate wood carvings. The walls were all adorned with paintings and gilded silver frames, and multiple glass display cases were filled with antique treasures. Silver Star whistled softly.
Shh, I'll be. It just keeps up unless he keeps in her office. I ain't really sure I can imagine what wardrobes be locked up in that secure folder of hers.
Twilight was already beginning to rummage through the massive desk, which dominated one end of the room. Let's just hope that info Lucky coaxed out the staff manager is correct, and she keeps the vault key in here. Reaching a locked door, she called over. Hey, do you think you could work your magic touch over here too?
Yeah, I reckon I can oblige you, ma'am.
Poisson's viewed as silent contempt. To think one of her own servants could be so careless. Well, not that the mayor would be in her employ much longer, or anywhere else for that matter. It would be easy enough to make sure that the clumsy earth pony was blacklisted throughout all of Palermo and Carl at least any establishment of repute. As a viceroy, Poisson's also had plenty of clout to assert the same in several surrounding provinces as well. The Seahold's Madam Lemon Hearts had provided the Patsy with suitable compensation. Yes, Poisson's was more than canny enough to recognize such an overly convenient setup. Still, she played along with it long enough to gauge the unicorn's motives, which turned out to be simple enough. Lemon Hearts ran a charitable orphanage, and did a very fine job presenting herself as nothing more than a mere nurturing matron. Yet years of practice in the night court made it all too easy for the viceroy to see through a genial facade. After all, every pony had a price, something that they valued above all else, and what Lemon Hearts valued was something Poissons could respect. The matron was no mere bleeding heart, giving out free handouts to those who'd done nothing to deserve it. Rather, she was entirely pragmatic. If left to remain vagrant on the streets, such orphans would of course only grow up to be further drains on society. If taken in while they were young and malleable enough, they could be guided and provided with training needed to become productive citizens. It was an admirable endeavor, and so Poissons could look a bit reckless of enthusiasm in his pursuit. Enthusiasm that reminded her a bit of her own precious youth. Besides, to think of what she could gain, an entire generation of otherwise forgotten foals who could grow up knowing it was Poissons Couillon Abrasicolo that would have been their benefactor. Her portrait had been given a place of regal prominence in the facilities. Such a legacy would even be made to last more than a single generation. It wouldn't take much effort to set up a self-sustaining investment that could pay out dividends for decades to come. It would, in the end, be a very small price to pay for a single ruined dress, as she was far too wealthy to have ever cause to wear again anyway. She was already crunching the preliminary numbers in her head when she was rather rudely interrupted.
Excuse me, Poissons.
There was a scant few ponies to sneeze into her effort, nerve enough to address the viceroy directly by name. It was such a casual manner without apprehending her title. Poissons turned and surprised found herself face to face with a white and lavender-trimmed unicorn mare. To an ignorant plebeian, the middle-aged mare might be one of the less important guests in attendance, clad in only a simple, silken dress, the same light blue hue as her eyes, and accented only by a single strand about her neck, of pearls. Poissons, of course, knew better. "La Vervote," she said, adding emphasis to her equally inefficient address. "What a pleasure to see that you could be in attendance tonight. After your husband declined to attend, I was afraid I missed the opportunity to see you as well. Should we perhaps make our way to the other side of the ballroom? I do believe, as usual, Wallflower has been monopolizing no small number of guests with ever so exhaustively engaging conversational skills. It has been ages since the three of us were able to get together outside of official business."
Velvet eyed the elder Pegasus coolly.
Please, Poussins, let's not waste any time on such pretenses of base civility. They don't really suit you.
As he appraised her velvet dream, Poussins noted a subtle glow at the base of Velvet's unicorn horn, almost entirely hidden beneath her striped mane. It would be difficult for any pony else in the room to notice, especially since a perception filter. How utterly conspiratorial of you.
Hardly. I just thought it'd be simpler if we could speak candidly, without the need to worry about irreverent eavesdroppers.
Whatever pretell would you and I have to talk about possibly requires such precaution?
You shouldn't feign ignorance,
Velvet replied, doing nothing to disguise her deepening scowl.
It doesn't suit you either. The only way your intentions on this night could be any more obvious would be if you made that mare the guest of honor.
There was a short pause. Poussins gave an affection of confusion at the implication. Why, surely you don't mean that quaint young mare from Ponyville now? I really admit that having one of the elements of harmony here is the most unexpected privilege. But I have fight the best teams of Trottingham to cater this event every year, as you well know. I wasn't even the judge, so there's little I could have done to wreak anything to my benefit anyway. Velvet scoffed, knowing full well that Poussins was both rich and canny enough to do exactly that as he wanted to. Though, in this case, he was inclined to believe that this was amiss and was true. After all, it would have been easier to conceal the more obvious truth.
Indeed, but you never invited more than the top 2 teams, and even only when the winning farm was too small to properly cater to an event of this scale.
Perhaps you fail to notice that this year that scale includes a guest list twice as large as by any previous year. I assure you, the extra catering was essential. In fact, perhaps I could have invited the best 4 teams, but since it seems that Miss Tutmore had to beg for assistance from the 5th place team to cover her bill.
Yes, and you no doubt have reasonable enough excuse for inviting all those extra guests. A symbol of defiance, perhaps, against the impending threat of Tyrant's son. Funny, though, how the second round of invitations didn't get sent out until after the competition in Trottingham.
Velvet paused a moment, measuring the mood before adding,
Though now I start to consider who one of the judges was this year. Maybe I shouldn't put any blame on you at all. Maybe instead rumors are true, and that your senility, you're letting that viper Greengrass pull your strings like a mere puppet.
That last statement seemed to pierce Poussins' armor, as he made a rare show of force, spreading her aged wings wide, and again fully unfurling the train of her peacock dress in the process. No pony, least of all the young Duke of Canadia, could manipulate the vice-reigning Poussins National of the House of Oberderer-Scudo. Over her many decades in the Night Court, she had crushed dozens of upstarts like him. She would no doubt go on to crush a dozen more before her days were through. For now, she was just stringing the whelp along, giving him precisely enough rope to hang himself with. Once he made an appropriate mockery of the political process and had been ousted, preferably prison as well, she liked to make an example of him. He'd be all the proof she needed to those who bore the elements, requiring allies to protect her from such filth. Allies like herself, of course. Still, Poussins had not become so successful in her career by succumbing to a petty emotional outburst. As she gathered her wits back to see a smug grin already forming at the corner of her Velvetrine's lips. Of course, Velvet had already known it was Poussins who was playing green grass for the fool, not the other way around. Any implication to the contrary was just a ploy to roil her up, perhaps provoke her into a tantrum that would draw the crowd's attention, even through the perception filter. Well, 2 could play such games, and Poussins would prove their experience was nothing to be trifled with. As Poussins relaxed her wings, Sia began her strategic retort. I think that perhaps it is trying to scare me off to give yourself free rein to enact your own plans, or rather, your husband's. Poussins didn't wait for a reply, and the expression of Velvet's face was all she needed before moving in to strike while the iron was hot. Oh, please, don't look so shocked. Such of you was never that bullet's strong suit, and he always had been out of his league and continent. He's hardly done anything to conceal his contempt for the princess's apprentice.
and it's rather plainly clear he's just waiting for the first excuse he can find to take some kind of retribution over that unfortunate incident with the Ursa. Velvet cringed at the sting of those words, which dug a wound into her that was still fresh in her heart. With her own pride still injured, though, Poussins was in no mood to give quarter. A pity that, in all those years you spent playing the demure housewife, you never took the time to properly educate your children so they wouldn't bring harm on your house. This was, of course, an exaggeration. Poussins knew all too well that the Starlight Familia merely had a generations-old tradition whereby they born their hair focused on the provincial affairs of Latigo, while their spouse would focus on the national affairs of Equestria. Poussins always found a ridiculous division of labor. Why, she has had 2 provinces to govern in addition to her duties in the Night Court. Yet she never needed either her own previous 2 husbands to do anything, save providing the obviously exquisite assistance of siring offspring. Which was not to say she never cared for any of them beyond such practical needs, as both were always well provided for with all the luxury her ample wealth could provide. Still, that last taunt seemed to backfire, as a renewed confidence returned to Velvet's eyes. As if you were one to criticize such things. And why shouldn't I be? Taunted Poussins in a haughty, self-important superiority. I am easily 3 times the mother you are, and that's without counting all my grandfoes or my latest great-grandfoe. She smiled wryly and added mockingly, though I suppose you aren't so old yet that there's not time to at least try and catch up now, dear. Maybe you could manage to become at least half my equal. Really? Just how many of your children or theirs have you ostracized, disowned, or driven into veritable exile? Not as though you have ever had time to raise himself in your first place, though, so I guess you could just blame that on the nannies. No, Poussins, just because you birthed 7 children doesn't mean you know the first thing about what it means to be a mother. On your tongue, Velvet! It was a hiss, but the intent was no less clear than its lack of volume. You may hold the same rank as I do, but you are far too young and naive to understand the sacrifices I've had to ensure the pride and integrity that is the House of Entrepreneurs School's legacy. Even as I taught them the consequences of their defiance, I have still always ensured that not one of my descendants will ever want or need for suffer in total obscurity. Maybe, if you are lucky enough, you still have the chance to learn such lessons before your own house crumbles for want of real leadership. Luna is not merciful, so I doubt you'll hold the indiscretions of your daughter and husband against you personally. I suppose, though, if you're still unwilling to claim your true birthright, there is at least that son of yours. He has no wife to pawn his duties off of, and after all, it has been far too long since a true starlight sat in council with the princess. Poussins, however, was unable to fully enjoy her scathing remarks, as Velvet seemed oddly distant, no longer looking at Poussins directly, but off in the distance at something else. Attempting to follow the unicorn's gaze proved futile, though, revealing nothing except for a crowded guest. Oh, and a several servant that spilled the fondue, seemingly engaged in conversation with another servant. The failure of the other staffs immediately ostracized the incompetent mayor, disappointing Poussins. Perhaps he could make 2 examples of her staff before the night was over. Unable to gauge Velvet's distraction, Poussins simply chalked it up to general weariness. To the Artificer's credit, though, passed quickly enough, allowing her to conclude herself with calm dignity. If that is what comes to pass, then I will have every confidence in my son to make myself, his father, and yes, even his sister proud. As he turned to leave, Velvet spared one final glance over her shoulder. Good, though. She seemed to look more so past Poussins rather than at her. Perhaps, however, you should consider that it is not only the House of Starlight's viceroyship that is in need of fresh perspective. Poussins glared incessantly at the opponents of her supposed peer, to think that he had ever once admired Velvet's grandmother. Besides, Poussins was all too keenly aware that all her married possessions, time was one that she couldn't buy more of. Still, she had quite enough left to ensure her final legacy, and fully intended to use it to take every step needed to see that her great-grandson, the young Baronet Cedric Kevison, grew out to be a perfect heir to her title. If it took until the last breath, she would be certain that no more mistakes would be made,
No more whimsical flights of fancy would be allowed to distract a cult from his destiny. While Silver Star was retrieving Lucy, Twilight had gone to meet back up with Lucky. The two mayors made their way out of the ballroom, completely unaware that an intimately familiar acquaintance had noticed Twilight. Snowflake, as well as Lemon Hearts, were already waiting at the staircase, and so together all 6 ponies descended onto the labyrinth of catacombs beneath the manor. It wasn't long before they reached an archway that was guarded by a pair of burly minotaurs, each wielding a dangerously sharp pickaxe. The two behemoths both looked bored, but was still more than attentive enough to notice any sneaky intruders. Twilight edged back after having peeked around a nearby corner. She blinked to dispel the lingering glow detection spell from her eyes. That armor is impressively enchanted. I don't think even my strongest attack ball could do much more to scuff the fitness on one, let alone have effect on both. Can't use any kind of gears either, as long as you got those helmets on. Silverstar cracked his neck and pounded one hoof against the other.
If it's as simple as knocking off those helmets, I think me and old Snowflake here can handle that much. Think you can put up some kind of barrier to make certain no pony upstairs hear the commotion?
Now, you see point of no return? This is how you add some other opponents there. You don't just randomly say, oh, Rarity at one point punched the Griffin. Poor George. What did he ever do? Well, it's nice to know that George in this universe is having a perfectly good time at Poussance's party. The concern was apparent in Twilight's eyes, but not in affirmation. Before she could start channeling her next spell, though, Lemon Hearts interceded. Well, I'm sure you two strapping stallions are well up to the task. There are more subtle approaches for breaching that armor. The mayor then levitated a flask out from her bag. I just need one more ingredient. Turning to Snowflake, she continued, that is, if Mr. Huselars here would be so kindly to graciously let me borrow one of his feathers. The Pegasus tilted his head before slowly replying,
Yeah?
Excellent. Then with one swift pull, she grabbed the feather in her magic. According to the flash, she then dipped the feather into the contents and stirred gently. Miss Charms, dear, did you remember to bring some of the glasses from the ballroom I asked?
Huh? Oh, right. Did you go?
Answered the other mayor as he set out 2 wine shifters on the floor. As Lemon Hearts poured the pungently sweet contents in the flask, Twilight asked, What is that stuff? Just a little something I read about one lonely Hearts and Hose day. Moments later, after some careful instructions, Clover casually trotted around the corner, balancing the 2 snifters of vibrant purple liquid. Upon seeing her, the 2 minotaurs quickly snapped to attention and crossed their pikes in front of the gate.
Toad!
Spoke one.
Who goes there?
Grinning without a care, Clover responded, Oh, me? I'm just one of the servants for most else. I thought it would be really lousy of old Pussy to throw that lavish party for all the stuffy nobles, but to leave you two stuck down here all night with nothing to do. So, well, she looked conspiratorially left and right, before proceeding in a last loud whisper. I thought I'd sneak you down some of that fancy important exciting wine. The 2 minotaurs looked at each other, and then back to the point before uncrossing their pikes and realizing their postures.
Oh, well, I thought so, you. Of course, we shouldn't really be drinking on the job.
As the first minotaur smiled, the second added,
Yeah, 1 glass can't hurt, so as long as the old man never finds out.
And then, each one took 1 snifter in hand, and turning to the other, clinked before saying,
Scoot!
Detonating the content in 1 swig, the pair of minotaurs stood before each other before contemplating the flavor. Then suddenly their eyes went rigid, as their eyes fixed longingly on each other. Moments passed before...
Oh, why, I've never noticed what a walkie, stocky, beefy cake you are. Yeah, you're a fine piece of rugged, decorating, musty, meaty goodness yourself.
As the 2 minotaurs continued trading overly affectionate compliments of each other's physique, the other 5 ponies came down the hall to join Clever. You sure you'll be okay? Asked Twilight. Lemon Hearts dismissed the concern with a wave of her hoof. But of course, the effects of the potion only last 1 hour, more or less. Like, they won't even remember a thing after coming to their senses. Though, she would probably give these strapping young gentlesters some privacy.
Yeah, you're such a tasty, wasty looking dandy treat. I could just eat you all up. Not if I eat you first, my snuggly wuggy cuddle bear.
Lucy, Silver Star, Snowflake, and Twilight all averted their gaze, preferring not to think of the matter any further. Silver Star in particular added,
Ah, best records is right.
and with that, one by one broke away and passed through the archway into the labyrinth, until only clover charms lingered behind. I wonder if that's really true that Minotaurs are hung like a Clover! Twilight called sharply. As Clover caught up with the others to the first area section, Lucy was already pulling a large sheet of paper from her bag and spreading it on the floor for all to see. The sheet depicted an agricultural plans for a maze, complete with a path of crudely drawn in crayon, further doodles in the margins, as well as a few tooth stains. Sorry for the mess. I didn't actually work on this section of the matter. So I only have a copy of these plans because one of the other contractors took a liking to Woody back when he was still just a little foal and gave it to him to play with. It's fine, Twilight says he studied the map. This is more than we could have without you. As Lucy smiled shyly, Silver Spar spoke in concern.
Are you certain this will be safe? There could still be traps.
Lucy frowned but answered, Well, there are some traps. She indicated, pointing to a hoof to several marked spots on the map. Worried glances passed between the ponies, hoping that some of the nearby duels were just fools imagining. None of them were eager to contend with things like a pool of lava, nor what appeared to be some kind of shark swimming in it. And were there those crossbows mounted on their heads? As long as we stick to the main path, though, we shouldn't run into any problems. The traps are only there to cancel out trespassers, since the fight stream wouldn't want to accidentally set them off herself.
I suppose that makes sense, but if she's the head of the layout change, the map's gotta be at least 10 years old.
Maybe, but I've not heard of there being any further renovations to the manor, at least none large enough to make that possible, so as far as I know, the catacombs have been here and unchanged since the manor was first built 300 years ago. Alright then, Lucy, announced Twilight. We're counting on you to lead the way. The Earth Mare shuffled nervously, but then nodded. Reaching the end of the maze, the 6 ponies now found themselves standing in front of the large and heavily reinforced vault door. Twilight stood in awe as she scanned it with her magic. These enchantments are amazing! There's at least a dozen protective wards waved all together. Not only that, but these look like Elkish runes carved into it, and I think those embedded gems are Cheerleading spell cut. The door itself also looks like it's got traces of Aspherium in the alloy, and the scouting marks are indicative of Griffin storm forcing, if I'm not mistaken. I've not really had much of a chance to study tapir or zebra techniques, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some continuation from them as well. Huh? Clover said with a shrug. It seems like an ultra effort just to go through a door. Lucy carried. Well, this is where the Vice Queen's supposed to keep all her rarest and most private treasures. I'm not expert in magic, so I can't even begin to imagine how much this must have cost to commission. To be honest, even for a Vice Queen, I didn't know Poussons had that much wealth.
These characters are old by the looks of things, added Silver Star. This door been here since before the Vice Queen's family built a Emeral Booth.
Ooh, you really think so? Responded increasingly excited Twilight.
So,
asked Clover, what would happen if some ponies tried forcing this over? Twilight wore a grin that put her best comical compatriot to shame as he giggly answered, I have no idea! Clapping her host together as he giggly added, Isn't this great? Realizing the others were all staring at her, Twilight coughed again to regain her composure. I mean, that is to say, well, it's just that I could probably write an entire doctoral thesis on the study the intricacies of how, well, all these disparate enchantments were intercombed to create this door. Yes, interjected Lemonheart. Maybe you'll get the opportunity to do so in the future, but I believe we have more pressing concerns. Right, of course, said Twilight, somewhat dejectedly, sparing one last glance back at the door. As the scholarly unicorn opened her bag and levitated out an oddly structured polygonal stone, Clover blinked while rubbing the bridge of her nose. What the heck is that thing? Why is it giving me a headache just looking at it? It looks like something out of one of those weirdly artsy McEsquire paintings that my old boss would put up around the office. It's only convinced everybody how deep it was. More like off the deep end, am I right? Twilight forced out a short chuckle, to proceed to explain. This is a tumultia. It's a type of unique pan-dimensional geometric shape. No two are alike and are impossible to duplicate. This also happens to be the key to Poussons' vault. Very good, then. From her own bag, Lemonhearts produced a faded lock of mane. Thanks to Miss Tar's assistance, I was able to surreptitiously acquire this from the Vice Ring.
I still have to speak to her at sufficient length for the other half of my task. Taking the lock of Bane in her own aura, Twilight walked over to the adjacent unlocking mechanism, or rather, the unlocking mechanism. The door itself was functionally impervious. Rather, the device connected to it was designed to interrupt the enchantments so as to make it even possible to open the door. Placing the lock of Bane on a panel thus meant to confirm the device range's identity. Twilight then began to rotate the dimensia in front of the equally confusing looking hole. Now, I just had to figure out how the correct angle to actually insert this thing. Lemon Hearts rolled her eyes impatiently, while no one was watching her before reaching out and taking hold of the impossibly paradoxical object. If you allow me. Desi spun it slightly, before pressing against the lock and twisting in what almost seemed to be two different directions at once. Now, just one last step. The matron then wrapped around an aura around her own throat. She leaned over to the lock and spoke a single word. Puissance. It was an astonishingly inaccurate impersonation of the device ring. But would it be enough? Twilight shifted uneasily from one hoof to another. Lucy glanced about nervously. Silverstar eyed the door for any sign of trouble. Clover grinned in eager anticipation. Snowflake seemed to be preoccupied with a nearby spider web. There was a whirring buzz, and a followed hissing pop. The door glowed with an audible hum of power, and then with a jarring crack began to slowly open inwards. Smiling, Lemon Hearts turned back to the others and, still speaking with the Viceroy's voice, repeated the words Puissance herself had spoken in the commendation and simulation. On this most special days, I plan to give even more to you, my kiss. Switching back to her own voice, Lemon Hearts and added, well then, I do believe it's time we take this gracious hopes on upon that offer. As the 6 points entered the vault, they couldn't help but be overwhelmed by the stunning sight of so many treasures assembled in one place. Step by step, they made their way even deeper. Each new wonder was no less amazing than the last. Passing by the largest assortment of coins, both silver and archaic gold, mixed with gems of assorted colors. Clover whistled, then added, well, it's like those stories you hear of the brave knight who slays a dragon. All we're missing is the fair damsels in distress. Yes, that would make the scene all the more entertaining, now would it? Clover laughed awkwardly, back to her mouth of treasure. Well, Thames, you really are great with those voices, huh? Right? But the unicorn only shook her head slightly as her body froze racing. Lemsy? Screw loose! Oh, come now. It could have been flagged, so. Clover trailed off as she saw the increasingly dread gazes of her friends. More importantly, she heard the clattering of coins and gems. The inescapable realization struck it in, and bore witness as a great beast rose from the pile of coins and gems. Clover gulped to curse herself. You know my big mouth. Of course, the pony didn't feel big in any way as her eyes took in the sight. Black scales and massing spines, a purple underbelly, a mouth full of dagger-like teeth, and at the end of a snake-like neck. 4 limbs ending in equally vicious claws, sinuous wings, all of it adding up to an imposing reptilian form. Nearly twice the size of all ponies put together, it gazed down with a vibrant, chartreuse eyes. Then the dragon spoke. So, what do we have here? 6 little ponies who lost their way. The mistress ought to be pleased. No, she can't be pleased at all. The dragon, or rather, Ebony, Mephiluence of the Day and Night Shadows, as her mistress called her, stared down at the 6 intruders. It was a rare thing for any pony to visit here, other than the mistress herself, of course. And the actual thieves were only rarer still. In fact, to Maleficent's recollection, they had never been once an unwelcome intruder larger than a mouse. Oh, but the possibilities this presents, she thought directly.
Yeah!
Music was cut short by the white pony as he launched himself bodily into the air, 2 small wings buzzing as he fiercely charged the dragon. Melissa's mind found this attack cute, or not so boring and made her yawn. Of course, she actually opened her maw, as it instead produced a gout of chartreuse flames, engulfing the fullest pony. As it looked clear, however, there was nothing, not even the expected charged corpse. Pop! Turning her head, she caught the magical flash of her intended victim reappeared next to his now panting cohort. His coat and mane were scorched and blackened with soot, and he tailed dizzily, but seemed woefully unharmed. Well, aren't you a talented little unicorn? Shall we see how long you keep this up?
There was a second flash of music, and now the unicorn was levitating in chest.
Well, actually, I thought maybe we could cut a deal.
The unicorn forced a grin, but her eyes still trembled in fear. The chest opened to reveal a content of silver coins.
Dragons are supposed to like treasure, right? If you let us pass safely, there could be more to come from. A lot more.
Silence hung in the air before Maleficent began to laugh.
Surely you're just little pony. Look around you at all the treasures of this vault. Do you think we so petty that I would have a use for a measly tribute?
Is that so, beast? Declared a second unicorn with a yellow coat, as he stepped forward with a preposterously undue confidence. Does this vault and all its contents actually belong to the Viceroy? Really, what are you other than a glorified guard dog? It was tempting to incinerate the puny little pony and just be done with it. This was a rare opportunity, however, that Maleficent was far from any hurry to rush to a premature conclusion.
Well then, aren't you the bold one to think you can speak to me like that? Still, your pretentious bravado in the face of impending doom amuses me. I suppose I can indulge a brief taunt. I so do enjoy playing with my food.
Maleficent smiled as the last line infected the desired reflexive gulp of dread in her prey. Except it was only the other 5 who did so, while the other one still stood firm and seemingly without concern. In many ways, the lack of fear was an insult to her own draconic pride, but at the same time, it reminded her of that day so many years ago, when she first met the mistress. She was a little more than a scrawling whelp back then, struggling to keep pace with her larger, more able-bodied kin during the last great migration. Too weak to assert herself among her peers, she had been forced to make her own isolated camp. Yet Serenity had smiled upon her, when the pony she had now called mistress approached her with an offer.
You are mostly correct, little pony. Everything in this vault is the mistress's. Why, even myself belong to her. Or at least those are the terms of our arrangement. A lifetime of devotion in exchange for all these treasures upon her eventual passing. After all, what is the life of one pony to a dragon? If it pleases the mistress to claim that she owns me for a scant few decades and later, 100 years from now, she and any of your kind that ever knew her will all be dust. But I shall remain and be all the wealthier for my brief years of servitude.
If what you say is true, though, then why turn your snout up at our offering? No matter how trivial, does not each and every cord only make your heart larger? We need only but briefly borrow the use of a single relic, and even remove it from this vault. Isn't that right, Miss Sparkle? It took the purple unicorn a moment to register she was being spoken to. No doubt her meager pony mind still preoccupied with the thoughts of impending demise. All the while her mouth moved wordlessly until, yes, that's right. We just need to perform a single ritual, then we'll be on our way, and you can keep the silver for your trouble. Now instead of fear, the unicorn's eyes gleamed with hope, as did her other compatriots. Maleficent only needed to disabuse of them of that.
And what if I would prefer to keep 6 juicy lumps of equine flesh for my trouble instead? I already have plenty of silver, but while the mistress feeds me as well, the meat of her own kind is one of the few delicacies she's always denied me. I must say, I'm rather curious as to what ponies taste like.
Beg my pardon.
The brown stallion, who seemed to otherwise be doing his best to comfort a light blue mare he held in his hooves.
Oh, ma'am, but I reckon trying to eat us all would be a little more trouble than it's worth. I don't fancy our chances, but there are 6 of us, so I reckon we can still do some damage.
Don't think you can intimidate me with meager threats. Dragons are most resilient and fast to heal. Besides, it can be ever so dull down here alone. I think I can use the exercise.
Maybe, but I reckon some of these here antiques are mad fragile.
You wouldn't dare!
She roared, dropping all pretenses of civility.
Just for that, I'll break your legs and make you watch as I eat all the rest first. Oh, and I assure you, I'll be extra slow with that blue one you seem so fond with.
The stallion's eyes filled with a pretended defiance as he pushed the trembling mare he had been coddling behind him. He took up a firm stance. It was all for show, though,
and the two companions sliced each other up knew exactly how it would end. Despite the stallion's outward bravado, the mournful resignation that had claimed his soul was all too delectably obvious. Maleficent considered it almost a sufficient consultation to delay her wrath. Almost, but not quite. And what if I could sweeten the deal? Neil wanted again. Not that Maleficent had any more reason to care as he stalked towards the first of her prey with deliberately slow menace. I happen to run an orphanage full of young ponies with no family to miss them. You let us live as well complete our business here, and I will in turn bring you one deliciously tender foal every year to sate your hunger. All was still and quiet in the vault. 5 ponies stood aghast in petrified confusion. Even Maleficent herself was too shocked to be angry, that she no longer carried the source of her horror. Yellow Pony's offer was entirely unexpected that, even in her own predatory hunger, the dragon could scarcely comprehend it. She contemplated the yellow pony carefully. The mare did smell children, so there was some truth to her words. Further, her expression showed no signs of hesitance that would otherwise suggest a hasty deception. There was something else, though. Something unlike anything Maleficent had ever observed in a pony. Admittedly, she only met a scant few ponies, and yet, whatever it was that made this one different, it was something she found profoundly unnerving. It had been many years now since the great dragon felt this small. She had drawn so much strength from the mistress of stature. But that horn would one day be her own. How was it possible a single pony made her hesitant with the uncertainty of a mere hatchling? Well, dragon, what will it be? 6 adults a day, or a steady supply of helpless children for decades to come? Moses knew she should kill the impotent little thing. Kill them all and be done with it, and yet... You are younger than the mistress, little pony. If you are lying to me, then when she passes from this world, I will hunt you down and extract my promised tribute, with interest to be paid in torturous pain. Despite the threat, the unicorn didn't falter, not even for a momentary instant. Instead, she only narrowed her gaze and with a predatory grin flatly replied, Then we have a deal. As Twilight stood overlooking the intricately drawn spell circle, making sure every line in the description was in place, she couldn't also help but reflect on the events that all conspired to bring her to this point. Ponyville, Trixie, Lulamoon, and Ursa, which all set this course in motion. As she stood there were her assembled cohorts. Silverstar, the first pony to take her plight at face value and give her back to her the help she desperately needed. Clover Charms, a pony she never even intended to ask, but whose uncompromising, optimistic enthusiasm turned out to be exactly what she had been looking for, truly living up to her own lucky nickname. Snowflake, who, despite all his quirks, had pulled through and supported them all every step of the way. Lucy Screws, admittedly, been hard getting to know the soft-spoken, fidgety mare, but Silverstar seemed to have more than enough faith in her. Lastly, Lemon Heart, the beneficent matron who provided for so many children. Children she does use as a bargaining chip. No! How could Twilight even entertain for a second such a doubt? It had all been a bluff. It couldn't be anything else. There was just no way that a pony like Lemon Heart's could be anything less than a genuine oracle. Even if it hadn't been all for her efforts, going the extra mile to bring the 6 of them together, none of this would ever have happened in the first place. And yet... Twilight lamented as she closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. And yet, hadn't she been equally sure of Lulamoon? The princess's protege, the pony who revived the very elements of harmony. Surely, she had thought, since the pony would no less be the greatest archmage since sorrowful and bearded. No, it wasn't the same. It couldn't be the same. Twilight had seen through Lulamoon's act from the first moment they met. It had only been her own doubts that caused her to briefly consider otherwise, caused her to make that terrible mistake, that landed her in all this trouble. Not ever again. She couldn't second-guess herself like that anymore. Soon, very soon, she'd be vindicated as the real hero that Equestria deserved, and Lulamoon would be forever exposed for the frauds he had always been from the start. Then it would finally be over, and Twilight could finally, at long last, go home. She was done with running, done with hiding, and after tonight, she never had to do either. Never again. All her fears and doubts vanquished by righteous hope. Twilight opened her eyes as she exhaled the breath she had been holding. All right, every pony, take your places. It's time to become heroes. The 6 ponies each took their mark around the circle. At the center between them sat the open pouch containing the shreds of coronas or regalia. Twilight, does checking here, but we're sure that this is going to switch your elements and not bring forth a little alicorn filly that Trixie's going to have to take care of, and we're all going to have to learn a big lesson about what it means to be nurturing versus nature. I really love past tense. Twilight levitated the alicorn amulet up over her head, and then slowly began to channel her magic through it. Lines of power stretched from it to each of the 5 other ponies, and from each of them to another, forming a hexagram of light. The power then cascaded forth. It condensed on the shattered shards of the center, which began to levitate and radiate an ever-cascading greater power. There were colors. So many colors that Twilight could see them all. The entire spectrum that was the greatest magic known to ponydom. The elements of harmony! It was a power beyond any one pony. The power that united them all in a common bond. They weren't any colors at all, but rather they were just one color that blended together until the whole chamber became a wasp in blinding light of the purest white. The unicorn blinked. She didn't know when she had collapsed or how long she just laid there. As her vision cleared, Twilight brushed an errant stand of light made from her eyes, slowly realizing that somehow mystical feedback had undone her perm. Glancing backwards, she saw that her tail and even cue mark had been restored to their normal forms. "Oh, wow, Thames. Look, you did it. You really did it," said Clover as he decided to bounce in place. As he climbed back to her host, Twilight returned her attention to the center of the circle. There sat 6 pieces of golden ornate jewelry. 5 necklaces, each adorned with a colored gem in the shape of her cohort's cutie marks, and 1 diadem. Twilight gazed with face of the prize he had coveted, and the 6-pointed starburst gem that topped it. The final culmination of all her hardship and struggles.
"Well, I'll be," said Silverstar with a whistle. "I reckon she really did."
"Well, Miss Sparkle, it seems congratulations are in order," agreed Lemon Hearts.
Yeah!
Moments passed, but while the others celebrated, Twilight only intensified her scrutiny. Moving magic through her horn so she could look past the mere sights she analyzed the arguments before her. "No!" Twilight finally yelled out. We failed." She then sank back to her hindquarters, ears wilting in despair.
"But Thames, look, they're right there, aren't they?"
Unicorn shook her head morosely. "It might look that way," Twilight said as he levitated the diadem, "but these are nothing but cheap, useless junk!" She flicked her hoof against the replica of the element of magic. The ring echoed through the chamber, followed by silence, then a crack. The false element split down the middle, fractures spreading not only through the gem, but the gold as well, until the whole thing came crumbling apart completely. Lucky scooped up the necklace covering the blue-colored sage gem, while Lucy did the same with the necklace bearing a screw-shaped gem. Both artifacts, however, proceeded to crumble, just the same in their hooves. The sound of scrap metal fractured jewel shards echoing hollowly across the floor. Her heart just felt just as empty. Twilight couldn't believe it. Had Gotel's research been faulty, or perhaps the alicorn amulet was an insufficient catalyst? Or maybe she just didn't have a sufficient sampling of the elements' original magic. Or else... No, she could scarcely bring herself to consider, but what if she'd been wrong this whole time? Was she, Twilight Sparkle, top of her class, a magical prodigy without peer, not actually worthy to wield the elements of harmony? If that true, could that mean Lula Moon? That Trixie had been right all along? As her mind despairingly struggled to come to terms with this potential revelation, Twilight felt a firm hoof wrap around her barrel. She looked and saw Silverstar embracing her.
"There, girl. It was a mighty fine try."
Next to him stood Lucy, who simply smiled warmly. On Twilight's other side stood Clover Charms, her smile as uncompromising as ever. "He's right there, Tembra. We all tried our best, and that's all that matters."
"Yeah!"
exclaimed Snowflake as he joined the circle of companions, and drew with all 5 ponies into a tight group hug. Blug even seemed to be tearing up with what her BBBFF would call a measure of liquid pride. Wait, only 5? Separate stood Lemon Hearts. "All quite true, I suppose. I think the souvenir will make a lovely consolation prize," she said as he levitated the alicorn amulet to her neck and fastened the clasp. Then, red light flashed in her eyes. "Oh yes, this should do quite adequately."